Right friends, welcome back to LearningSpace. This is Economic Survey special series. I would like to present 8 modules of Economic Survey 2021-22. Out of these 8 modules, first 2 modules constitute salient features, that is part 1 and part 2. After that, 6 modules will be special modules which discuss about various special aspects mentioned in the economic survey. So overall, economic survey 21-22 I am going to present in 8 modules. And the second is why the students are required to listen to economic survey. There are 2 advantages. One is it talks about various macroeconomic trends in the current year, that is 21-22, and the second one is it also gives projections for the upcoming financial year, that is 2022-23. This is one important aspect about economic survey. At the same time, the second most important aspect as far as economic survey is concerned, it is an opportunity to learn lot of words, so much of terminology pertaining to economy through various charts. You can easily inbuilt your knowledge in economy as far as this economic survey is concerned. So friends, economic survey and union budget, listening to these 2 documents is the most important part in any student's knowledge acquisition. So don't separate them, because economic survey gives you various macroeconomic trends, and at the same time many issues are discussed here which have relevance on the Indian economy as we go forward. Union budget talks about what are the government proposals. So these 2 documents are very important. Another important thing is this economic survey. Normally it is presented by the chief economic advisor, but for the past 1 month or so, the post of chief economic advisor or CEA is vacant. Now only Mr. Anant Nageshwaran was appointed as the CEA. So because of this reason, this time it is prepared by the principal economic advisor. So this is one important change. As usual, it is presented by the Union Finance Minister in the Parliament. And this is presented 1 day before the union budget. This is the convention. So because of these reasons, please concentrate on all these 8 modules. Union budget, we are planning to produce 3 modules. So these 8 modules plus 3 modules, they will give you comprehensive view about Indian economy. What I will do is, in the first and second modules, I will take various statements from economic survey and I would like to explain in a crystal clear way. And some charts also I will use. These are the charts from economic survey taken directly from the economic survey document. Please don't worry, the total economic survey is around 400 pages. You need not worry. I will make it very simple in 8 modules. So please take these modules as collector's edition. You can watch even after 6 months once again. That is worth watching these modules. Friends, one important announcement before going forward. Many students are asking current affairs, editorial discussions, budget, economic survey. Why can't you open separate channel exclusively for this current affairs and editorial discussions? All of you are familiar. We have one LearningSpace digital channel, but that till now intended for UPSC aspirants. So now, to benefit the entire student fraternity, whether you are preparing for bank, whether you are preparing for group 1 services, whether you are preparing for any other examination like LIC, like SSC, it should not matter. We are in fact starting a separate channel on 3rd February, exclusive channel. You can watch all my current affairs and editorial discussions as we go forward. So month after month, that gives you a lot of insight into the knowledge required. because we teach what others don't. That is the specialty of LearningSpace. So please patronize, please give this channel as a gift to your brother or sister. It will be highly affordably priced, and that will be launched on 3rd February. Exclusive channel for current affairs and editorial discussions. It will benefit the student community as a whole. I need not explain much more than this because most of you are well aware about quality lectures of LearningSpace Digital. Right friends, having said this, let us move on to point by point, and after completing certain points, I would like to show you beautiful charts which were taken from the economic survey. So entire 400 pages I am going to make highly simple. It expects the GDP to grow by 9.2% this financial year. Friends, you need not euphoria about this particular thing, because of the simple reason, in the COVID year, as per the recent estimates, the economy shrunk by 6.6%. So therefore, prior to COVID, if the economy was 100, it already became 93.4 because of 6.6% contraction. So over this 93.4, you have to calculate 9.2%. It becomes 102 or so. So therefore, in comparison to pre-COVID GDP, our GDP in this current financial year will become just around 2% higher. So therefore, because of base effect, it looks high, but actually it is not high when you compare it with pre-COVID. Of course, COVID has caused a lot of devastation to economy, all of you are well aware. So therefore, I will show with the charts also after some time. Now we are just surpassing the GDP of pre-COVID year, that is 2019-20. Then this is a good thing, welcome measure. The economy next year is expected to grow at 8 to 8.5%. And two important things I would like to tell you. Next year, 8 to 8.5% growth, if it happens, it is quite good. And this assessment is based on certain assumptions. First one is vaccine coverage. Because of widespread vaccine coverage, Omicron couldn't do much to the Indian population. The spectacular achievement of Indian government is providing 150 crore vaccines, more than that in 1 year. Because of that, the population is safe now. Second is gains from supply side reforms. There are several supply side reforms, like for example PLI. Then for example retrospective taxation was taken out. In telecom sector, several reforms were heralded. MSMEs became very simple, registration became simple, categorization became simple. These are all supply side aspects which the government has taken care of. So therefore, supply side reforms because of this. Then easing of regulations, ease of doing business. Now the regulations are simplified. Robust export growth. This financial year, the exports are expected to touch $400 billion. The previous record was just $330 billion. In fact, our exports are hovering around 270 to 330 for the past decade or so. But now, luckily, we are going to get $400 billion exports. Of course, part of the reason is increase in the commodity prices globally. Otherwise also, Indian exports have done spectacularly well this year. So availability of fiscal space, now the emergency measures, the support that is going to come down. So subsequently government can spend more on capital expenditure. PM Gati Shakti government is focusing on infrastructure development. So because of these 4-5 things, now the government is thinking that the growth of 8 to 8.5% will materialize next year. Right friends, these are all the aspects which the government must be proud of. Then of course there are some caveats also. That means this 8 to 8.5% growth, that is based on certain assumptions. Further, no more pandemic related economic disruption. Now Omicron is not able to do much damage, but we don't know. Tomorrow some variant may come. So therefore the expectation of this growth of 8 to 8.5% is the pandemic related effect. That will be less. Then the second is monsoon will be normal, because agriculture is recording good growth rates, 3.6, 3.9, something like that. Withdrawal of global liquidity, because now you see several central banks are printing currency notes. Huge stimulus is given by central banks. Now there is a talk of raising the interest rates and reducing the liquidity. When the liquidity is suddenly reduced, then what happens? Then the stock markets, they may crash. Suddenly there may be impact on the Indian currency. So therefore such type of things are not expected. Whatever the governments in Western countries do, they will do very slowly. That is the assumption. Then oil prices now around $89 per barrel, and this is expected to be 70 to 75 per barrel. And global supply chain restrictions will ease. What is this meaning? Global supply chain restrictions means there is a shortage of drivers in some countries. There is a shortage of containers in some countries. There is a shortage of chips, because of which automobile manufacturing is affected. So friends, these 5 things are the caveats. Monsoon will be normal. No major disruption due to COVID-19. Then withdrawal of global liquidity by the central banks smoothly. Oil $70 to $75 a barrel. All these things are assumptions, right? And because of the government steps, private sector is in a position to ramp up investment, because you see government is increasing capital investment. When government increases capital investment, then automatically private sector investment, that is expected to push up, right? And India transformed from being among fragile 5 nations to 4th largest foreign exchange reserves. I will come to that a short while from now, maybe in this module or next module. Initially in 1990s, when the economic reforms were heralded, 1991, the foreign exchange reserves were precarious. But now India has got the highest, 4th highest. The highest is China, 4th highest is India. So India has got 4th highest foreign exchange reserves, more than $600 billion, more than the external debt of the country. So these are all the achievements. Then India's investment to GDP ratio, in fact, investment, gross fixed capital formation. So friends, gross capital formation is equals to gross fixed capital formation plus inventory plus valuables, like that all of you know the fundamentals. Investment expenditure is a gross fixed capital formation, and investment expenditure is now increasing. During the past decade, it was on the declining trend. Now it started increasing. This is one positive thing. Just you see, this I have already told you. This is 9.2% growth. That is because of this base effect. So therefore, prior to COVID, whatever the income, this particular GDP was there. So we are going to reach those GDP figures. We are going to surpass that. I will show that a short while from now. So now this is 8 to 8.5% growth is anticipated. We have already seen about it. This is WPI. Consumer price index is not major worry. It is hovering around 5% or so. But WPI continues to be worry. But the government expects this will ease out in the near future. And this is the real cause of worry, because now you see Indian basket is now $89 per barrel. So this throws some headwinds. Now let us have a glance at it. So this is gross domestic product and gross value added. Friends, what is the difference? Gross domestic product or GDP is equals to, I am telling in just layman's terms, GDP is equals to GVA plus product taxes minus subsidies. Simply you understand that gross value added is arrived at for basic prices at factor cost. All those are fundamentals. I am not going into that. So after arriving GVA at basic prices, listen carefully, after arriving at GVA, then add taxes, subtract subsidies. So then you will arrive at GDP at market prices, GDP at constant prices. The difference is when you look into the inflation effect. That means when you discard the inflation related component, then you will arrive at the gross domestic product at constant prices. Quite often in the newspapers, whatever you see, that is GDP at constant market prices. I hope you got clarity. So constant prices, they don't consider inflation related elements. Actual improvement in GDP, how much is there without considering inflation. So to convert this nominal GDP into real GDP, there is one GDP deflator. So that is the index which tracks how much inflation is there. So these are all the fundamentals. So you see here, in the first wave of coronavirus, the economy shrank too much, but the impact is not much. In the second wave, the country was well prepared to tackle. You see here, GVA and GDP are given here. Pre-pandemic, look at this blue line. Here 2019-20, this is in fact GDP, and this is 21-22 expected GDP. You see, I have already told you previously, in the COVID year, this has gone down to this level and now it increased. So therefore, it is a slightly, maybe 2% or so higher than the GDP of pre-COVID. Similarly, if you see GVA also, GVA, you see normally GVA is less than GDP because the taxes are there in between. I have already told you GDP is equals to GVA plus taxes, or you can say product taxes minus product subsidies. I am not going into the details of production taxes, production subsidies. Let us leave that because it will become complex. From the layman's perspective, please understand GDP is equals to GVA at basic prices plus product taxes minus product subsidies. So here you see GVA also slightly higher. Then you see, have a glance at various sectors of the economy. Friends, let me tell you three important things here. What are various methods of calculating GDP? That's why I told this is biggest opportunity to learn lot many economy related terms. So there are three methods of calculating GDP. First one is value added method, or you can call it product method. Value added method or product method. Second method is income method. Third one is expenditure method. Listen carefully. Out of these three, second one is not followed by India. India follows value added and expenditure method. And I will explain what are the components when you calculate through value added, what are the components when you calculate through expenditure method. Listen carefully. India calculates GDP in two methods. Actually, there are three methods of calculating GDP. One is value added method. Second one is income method. Third one is expenditure method. India calculates value added and expenditure method. When you look at value added method, there are 8 components, very important point. Agriculture and allied sectors. So these are the figures. Don't worry, these are the figures. If prior to COVID, if the economy was 100, how much is now? Very simple. Prior to COVID, if it was 100, how much is now? Agriculture became 107.7 because it has grown by 3.6, 3.9, something like that. Then you see, second component is industry. Quite often in the newspapers, you come across agriculture and allied sectors, industry, then services. So what are the components? This is the methodology, or this is the bifurcation when you look at GDP from the perspective of this value added method or product method. When you look at the GDP from expenditure method, the dynamism is entirely different. The paradigm is entirely different. I will come to that a short while from now. So let us concentrate on value added method. In the value added method, there are 8 sectors. First one is agriculture and allied sectors. And second is industry. Industry includes 4 components. Listen carefully. Industry includes 4 components. One is mining and quarrying. Second is manufacturing. Third is electricity, gas, water supply and other utility services and construction. So out of this industry, here you see, out of industry, manufacturing and construction are major components. I will come to this, that will be reflected here. You can go through it clearly here. So these 2 are the major components. And then services. Services, there are 3 things you can have a glance at it. And here you see trade, hotels, transport, communication and services. This you see, it is at 92, 91.5 to be specific. Why? Others are around 100 or so. But why this is 91? Because of COVID-19, these are the sectors affected badly. Hotel sector is affected. Then this transport sector is affected. Hospitality sector is affected. Because of that, you see 91.5. That means pre-COVID level. If the economic activity was 100, now it is 91.5. Whereas for other sectors, we crossed the pre-COVID levels. So therefore, some people say the economic recovery is not V-shaped. It is a K-shaped recovery because of this precise reason. I hope you got clarity. And now let us look at this. Agriculture and allied sectors. We are talking about GVA. Agriculture and allied sectors is around 18.8%. Listen carefully, 18.8. Industry 28%. That means total share in the overall value of the GVA in the nation. So out of 28, manufacturing 15.4, construction 8. Please remember 2 things. Manufacturing is hovering around 15-16%. And in fact, there is not much improvement after 1991 economic reforms. It is almost hovering around 14, 15, 16% during the past 30 years. Construction is 8%. It creates so many jobs. So friends, these 2 comes under this industry. Then comes the services. In the services, financial, real estate and professional services, they constitute 21%. Public administration, defense, you can say government services, they constitute 15%. Trade, hotels, transport, that constitute around 17%. So 53% is services. So this is the broad bifurcation of gross value added as far as India is concerned. I hope you got clarity. Now this is expenditure method. That is the third method I talked about. First method, value added, 8 sectors of the economy. I explained how they are classified, what is their contribution. This is very important from your examination perspective. And now let us look at the expenditure method. In the expenditure method, here you see, let me talk about the share of the components. Here, private consumption highest. It is 57.5, but the worry is pre-COVID it was 60.5. So friends, consumption is the real cause of concern. That is private final consumption expenditure. So this particular component is the highest as far as GDP is concerned when one looks at expenditure method. Please don't get confused. The previous one is with value added method. This is expenditure method. In the expenditure method, the highest component is private final consumption expenditure, which constitutes around 57%. Previously, it was 60%. So now private consumption is yet to pick up. We have not reached the pre-COVID levels. So therefore, incomes of several people might have affected. That is the important point to note. And this is government final consumption expenditure. That is 12%. Gross fixed capital formation, we already talked about. This increased, this is the positive thing. I already told you, gross fixed capital formation or GFCF. So the thing is here, gross capital formation is equals to, gross capital formation is equals to, this is gross capital formation is equals to gross fixed capital formation plus inventory plus some valuables like gold, right? So therefore this is the bifurcation. Inventory means, suppose if the government is constructing a bridge, it purchased steel, it purchased cement, but the bridge is yet to be constructed. So that comes under inventory. Valuables, gold. If the gold reserves increase, or you can say, if the gold is purchased by the residents, it is capital asset, but it will not assist in the investment purposes. So therefore it is shown separately as valuables. And here gross fixed capital formation, this is considered as investment expenditure. And one positive thing is it is increasing. Then the next one is net exports, that is exports minus this imports. Imports are higher for the nation, exports are less for the nation, so imports are higher, so therefore here minus 3. So therefore if you see, there are 4 components here as far as expenditure method is concerned. One is private final consumption expenditure, which constitutes 57.5%. Second one is gross fixed capital formation or investment expenditure, close to 30%. Government final consumption expenditure is around 12%. And net exports is minus 3, you can say, because imports are higher than exports. I hope you got clarity about it. Now, the capital formation is attributed to the government's policy thrust of quickening the virtuous cycle of growth via capex and infrastructure spending. What is the meaning? Vicious cycle, opposite is virtuous cycle. Suppose when the fiscal deficit goes out of control, then inflation will take place in the country. Because of that, government may be required to borrow more and rupee may slide. That's all vicious cycle. Opposite is virtuous cycle. Because of various government programs, now we are in the virtuous cycle of growth. So because of that, capital formation is attributed to government's policy thrust on virtuous cycle of growth via capital expenditure and infrastructure spending. And private investment recovery, this is expected to take off, but at present it has not taken off, and it is poised for stronger investment. Then private consumption, I have already told you. Trade, hotels, this is yet to fully recover, because in the previous slide we have seen it is at 91.5. So like that. Survey calls for improving productivity of small marginal farmers through crop diversification. This is most important. Agriculture, I have already told you, it has grown by 3.9% and 3.6%. And global resurgence in inflation. The economic survey flagged global resurgence in inflation. Please recollect, in European Union countries, inflation is at around 5%, 6%. In USA, the inflation reached the highest in 40 years. So the economic survey talks about there are chances of imported inflation. When the inflation rises, the product costs will increase and it will lead to imported inflation. Exports are expected to grow and imports are expected to grow much higher. I already talked about exports, $400 billion. And here you see food grains. Area sown under food grains, Kharif, it has seen consistent increase. Rabi also it has shown consistent increase, because these are the figures for only part of the period. So therefore, area under food grains has seen consistent increase. India has got the 4th highest foreign exchange reserves, and import cover, if you see, it is sufficient for around 13-14 months or so. And now the foreign exchange reserves are more than $600 billion. Now India has got the 4th highest foreign exchange reserves. You see exports increased. So this talks about exports. Exports increased, no doubt about it, but imports increased much faster than exports. Because of that, the trade deficit also increased, you can see. And this is one important significant development is the international trade in services. The services is the guiding light here, you see. In the services, we are seeing there is lot of improvement in the net services exports from India because of COVID-19, because of resurgence in the IT sector. Friends, several important things we deliberated in this first module. This is a Salient Features Part 1. Salient Features Part 2 we are going to produce immediately. Please do watch all these two modules. Have a nice day. Thank you.